Wow. What a welcome. Thank you very much indeed. Well, guess who's back? Back again.
Back again!
I've been retired for 4 years, and I wasn't going to stand in this election. I wasn't going to get back involved, but I started to go out and campaign and travel around the country with some other candidates, and I began to get this sense that people in the street were walking up to me and saying, "Why are you not standing?" As if, Nigel, you're letting us down. And I realised there'd been so many millions of people who supported me in the UKIP years, who supported me through the referendum campaign, who supported me in 2019 when I had my first comeback with the Brexit Party. And somehow I thought, I can't let these people down. But I also began to get a sense that something is happening out there. There is a genuine feeling of being let down by the political system. There is a feeling that the two men that were being offered as potential prime ministers must be the single most uninspiring choice the country's ever had at any point in its democratic history. So I decided just over 3 weeks ago that I'd give it a go, and boy, things are moving. Now, to bring you up to speed, a slew of opinion polls came out yesterday afternoon between 4:30 and 7:30. But please take those polls with a pinch of salt, and I'm aiming this particularly at our friends from the media. One of the polls, conducted by More in Common, said that the Reform Party were on 8% nationally and would win no seats. How can that be? Well, I'll tell you. Because the field work for that poll began on the 22nd of May. That is 29 days ago. Another big poll, which the Telegraph has flashed on today, from Savanta, that says we're doing better, but we'll win no seats. And the field work from that started on the 4th of June. Now, unless I'm missing something, it is now the 20th of June. And I think my re-entry into the front line of British politics, the release of our contract with the people, the sense that I get of the momentum that is happening out there around the country, and we are the subject of conversation at breakfast and in bingo halls and down the pub with millions, and we are the story. So these polls are not wrong, but they're massively out of date. We're doing much, much better than that, and I think what you'll see are some more polls over the weekend, at least if they're doing them honestly, which means they have to prompt the party, not hide us down another list for the Christian People's Alliance or whatever else, or the Women's Equality Party or whatever else it may be. And if they don't re-weight the undecideds back to the last general election, you will see polls this weekend that have us a percentage point consistently ahead of the Conservatives nationally, though trailing, obviously, a long way behind Labour. In most of England and Wales now, geographically, we are in second place to the Labour Party. And I think what's going to happen is people are going to wake up to the fact that effectively the election's over. Indeed, today's Telegraph front page says Tory wipeout. And it's going to be a Tory wipeout, because people have lost such faith and such confidence in them. And frankly, they betrayed the vote they got in 2019. They betrayed the Brexiteers, and they betrayed me, who stood aside against them in 320 seats, because I wanted to get Brexit over the line. So once people realise it's over, that Labour are going to win, then I will say to Conservative voters, this is the one chance you've got to vote with your heart, to vote for what you really believe in. We know who the government are going to be. Who do you think would put up better opposition in the House of Commons to the Starmer government on them taking us closer back to the European Union, on the issue of immigration and illegal immigration, where of the 6 key priorities that Starmer launched, those words weren't even mentioned? And who do you think would stand up best for Britain's small businesses and the subject of my visit to Catton Hall today, who will stand up best for the interests of our rural communities too? Is it me? Or is it a bitterly divided Conservative Party who seem to hate each other and be split down the middle? And I'll say to Labour voters as the time comes, you're guaranteed this big majority. You're guaranteed that the first past the post system, even if you get 38% of the vote, might get you 70% of the seats. And by the way, the demand for electoral reform and change after this general election will be totally and utterly unstoppable, and I will be leading that campaign all around the country. So, we're in a very strong position. We've got momentum, we're rallying strongly, and there's been a bit of talk today about people betting. We've had a close protection bodyguard of the Prime Minister, a party official, a Conservative Party candidate, all of whom won money on it being an early election. So it looks as though the corruption within that organisation perhaps runs deeper than any of us had realised. But I like a bet. So I'll willingly say to the owners and bosses of Savanta polling, more in common polling, if they want to have a bet with me, if they think we're going to win those seats, I'll have a bet that we are going to win seats. And frankly, I think I'm quite prepared to take on the biggest bet of my life, because we will do that. Now today we've got Keir Starmer and we've got Rishi Sunak, these inspiring figures, who are going to be talking about housing. They're going to be talking about the lack of housing. They're going to be talking about the lack of affordability of housing. And Labour will also talk about rents. I wonder whether either of them will say that the British population has risen by 10 million people since Tony Blair came to power, and 6 million of that has happened since 2010, when Call Me Dave became our Prime Minister. 85% of that 10 million increase is directly as a result of wholly irresponsible policies on legal and indeed too on illegal immigration. I will bet you every penny in Lombard Street to an orange that neither of them make the connection between a lack of housing and the population explosion, the population crisis that we're all living through. Just think about this. Just to cope with legal net migration, we have to build a new dwelling every 2 minutes in this country. Every 2 minutes, a new dwelling needs to be built just to cope with those that are coming in, let alone the backlog, the waiting lists. And when it comes to social housing, people being left on waiting lists for a year, 18 months, sometimes more, and there's an awful lot of people with young kids living in quite cramped conditions with their parents because they've literally got nowhere to go. And yet we find on many of those lists priority being given to people with absolutely no connection to this country whatsoever. I bet none of them mentioned that. And even on rents have risen since 2021 by between 20 and 30%, depending where you live in the country. And now a very large number of people living in rented accommodation, and particularly young people, now spending over half their after-tax income just on somewhere to stay. So, as I say, I doubt those arguments will get made by them, they'll get made by me. I'm going to be going off to Blackpool later, very much a symbol of a red wall seat. Labour rock solid in Blackpool, suddenly the Conservatives win Blackpool South. And one of the things that's really upset those voters is we really thought with Brexit and with the Boris Johnson premiership, we really thought, we were told, it would mean we'd get back control of our borders. And what's happened? Well, ever since the beginning of 2020, I was going out into the English Channel, filming the small boats, asking why are the broadcasters not covering this story? Why are the newspapers not covering this story? And I think, to be honest with you, the pickup I was getting on YouTube and elsewhere, I think I bullied the media establishment into covering the story. And I predicted vast numbers would come. I said there was a danger of an invasion. Oh, what a terrible human being I am. What a terrible human being I am. How dare I use that word invasion? It's wrong. It's out of context. Well, 4,000 boats and 140,000 people later, I wonder what word I should use. Hardly a Sharabang Day outing, is it? And on Tuesday of this week, 882 people crossed the English Channel. Over 90% of them, young men. Young men with no documentation. Young men, in many cases, coming from countries that are at war, or have been through wars. Coming from countries in which terrorism is rife. Coming from countries in which violence and gang culture are all too prevalent. Coming from countries that don't even regard women as being good enough to be second-class citizens. And coming, having got rid of their iPhones and their passports by throwing them into the English Channel as soon as they reach the 12-mile line, making it devilishly tough for us to check really who they are or whether they have serious criminal records. You see, it isn't just the £8 million a day we're spending on the hotels, frustrating though that is. And it isn't just those that come and are taken immediately into the drugs trade or other illegal activity. And it isn't just those that have abscond and disappear. Oh, do you remember Rishi said we were going to detain people before the planes went to Rwanda in July? Do you remember that? Well, I can tell you every single one of them has been granted bail and are out, and most will abscond. But what I'm really going to say later on today is that this is a national security emergency, and it cannot be viewed any other way. And there's James Cleverly, the Home Secretary. Cleverly. I've never met anybody more inappropriately named. And Cleverly says, can you imagine what it would be like if Keir Starmer was in number 10? Well, what's it been like, matey, with you lot in number 10? It can hardly be any worse than it's been already. Vote for us, we'll stop the votes, says Rishi Sunak. Cobblers. As I've already said, even those that were picked to go are out on the run. And we'll never send any planes to Rwanda. We'll never send anybody to Rwanda, all the while we're part of a court based in Strasbourg that was set up with the best of intentions immediately after World War II, with the huge support of people like Winston Churchill. All right? But that court that has now become activist, that court that has now become interventionist, that court that is no longer fit for purpose, and that court that says we cannot control our own borders, who might be here and who we can get rid of. It took us 10 years to get rid of Abu Qatada because of the Human Rights Act. So we are clear and unequivocal. Of course, the lofty barrister Sir Keir, he loves all these international courts. And Sunak hasn't got the guts to deal with it because it would split his own party, but we're clear we must leave the European Court of Human Rights and take back control. Talking of Churchill, there was a letter sold at auction in London yesterday, a letter written by Churchill when he became a cabinet minister after the 1986 general election, and he wrote to his former maths master and said, "You're the only person that's ever inspired me to follow a subject that I didn't naturally enjoy, and it's because of you, sir, that I managed to pass my exams, to get into Sandhurst, to become an army officer, and it's because of you that I'm here now as a cabinet minister. And the letter was owned by a reform member in Essex, who came to see me a couple of weeks ago and said, would you like this as a gift on behalf of the party, for the party? So we sold it at auction in London yesterday, and just over £17,000 has come into the party's funds overnight. And very generous of our fellow member in Essex. I'll just say one more thing on the Churchill family. One member of the Churchill family, now not Nicholas Soames and others, but one member of the Churchill family is Jamie, the Duke of Marlborough. And the Duke of Marlborough is going to Ladies' Day at Ascot today. Now, I could have been at Ladies' Day Ascot, but Captain Hall was infinitely preferable. I tell you what, it'd work out much cheaper, I don't know. Anyway, what fun. So Jamie, the Duke of Marlborough, is going to Royal Ascot today, and he'll turn up at the Royal Enclosure wearing a Reform UK rosette. Churchill's great nephew is out there publicly, so out and proud, supporting the party. But I want to finish by saying something about rural England. About 15% of the population in our country live in rural or semi-rural areas or communities. And they tend not to play a particularly big part in our national debate. Now, they did, of course, in the early Blair years, where the Hunting Act took up over 600 hours of parliamentary time, and it's a subject over which passions run incredibly high on both sides. But we never discussed farming policy. We didn't discuss farming policy for half a century. We didn't need to, because our farming policy was decided in Brussels. We were members of the Common Agricultural Policy, and therefore farming was never an election issue, because it wasn't something over which the British government, frankly, had any say or any power. But farming has become a bigger and bigger political issue. In this country, I think we have to thank Jeremy Clarkson, frankly, for raising the profile of farming. Getting people thinking and talking about rural issues and loving the fact that he's finding it so difficult. I mean, it's what makes nobody makes good telly, doesn't it? But all over Europe, of course, farming has become an enormous political issue, with farmers' protests and farmers' strikes and roads being blocked and the French revolting. The French are revolting. They're going to really revolt in this general election, I'll tell you, you watch. But we haven't had much debate on any of these issues in this general election. It's almost as if the 15% that live in the rural communities are not part of that national conversation. So, my cards are on the table very clearly. I've lived all of my life in rural southern England. In fact, I still live in the same village in which I was born. So I have that sense of being rooted. I have that sense of community. And to me, family, community, country, these are the things that matter. These are the essence, I think, of what Reform UK stands for. These are our values. These are our principles. But farming has been very confused since Brexit. Boris Johnson gave a speech that, even by his own standards, was utterly ludicrous. When he spoke to the Conservative Party conference, I think 4 years ago, and he was talking about farming policy now we were outside the European Union. He said, we're going to rewild 30% of the English countryside. We're going to build back beaver. Beavers were running all over the countryside. Well, whether we like beavers or not, I mean, I don't have a beaver aversion or anything like that. But the thought that 30% of agricultural land would be scrapped as agricultural land, yeah, and then rewilded. was what he wanted as Prime Minister to do. In fact, I can't think of a government that has done more to suppress food production in this country than the Conservative Party since 2019. But now there's a general election, Rishi Sunak invites all the farmers to number 10 for a cup of tea and a biscuit and says, I'm on your side. Labour have almost nothing to say on this. Although Starmer himself actually did grow up in rural Surrey and did even work on a farm for a bit, but they're not saying anything about it. But it's the controls also over farming through the net zero agenda, and that is what is driving the European farmers mad, and it's impositions, not just on CO2 but on nitrates and so many other things. And of course, we all want to have a well-managed environment. We all want great biodiversity. I mean, I'm very much a supporter of what I call sympathetic farming, which would mean 15% of the farm would be hedges, banks, that we wouldn't mow, pasture that was close to watercourses. These are the sensible things we can do to keep relatively high yields, but also have increased biodiversity. So I want to do these things and do them sensibly. And, those of us that fish and those of us that shoot, we want as many animals out there in the wild for obvious reasons as can be. We are true defenders of our rivers, of our covers, of our hedgerows, and all of those things. So net zero is putting huge impositions on British farming, and there needs to be a proper debate about it. But also, it's, millions of us go to the countryside for pleasure. We come to places like Catton Hall, where we can shoot clays, or we can go orienteering, or we can do a multitude of things. And we face the prospect of a Labour government. And the arguments over the Hunting Act are gone. Whatever I think about that legislation isn't relevant anymore, because it's gone, it's done. The ban's been in for 20 years, but we now face the prospect even of trail hunting being banned. And Labour government are talking about making it illegal for a dog or a pack of dogs to trail a scent with you on a horse following. And that, frankly, is an imposition of the personal freedom of individual people, whether they're rural people or city people coming out at the weekend, and is a massive, massive step too far. I'm also worried about a series of EU directives and regulations on shotguns, on ammunition, that are still coming down the track. And it seems to me that the imposition on the lives of people living in rural England, the reduction, the narrowing of choices as to how they can live their lives is something we need to stand up and fight against. I may not agree with your hobby, sir, but I think you have the right to pursue it and do what you want to do. I think that's the kind of live and let live. What we need. So I hope there is some discussion on farming. I hope there is some discussion over the next couple of weeks on food production. I hope there is some debate about whether the net zero agenda is actually causing an enormous amount of harm for very, very little good. And I could go on, of course, to talk about biofuels being grown. I could go on about wood being imported and burnt in Drax power station. There are all sorts of things that we could debate on this. But it felt important to me that I said something about defending rural wildlife. I think that's very, very important. So, it's going to be another busy day. It's going to be another crazy couple of weeks. I've mercifully got used to living on 4.5 hours sleep a day. And I'm feeling younger than my 60 years. And so there's a big charge to the line for the next couple of weeks. I promise you, and I'm not just saying this, I promise you that anything is possible. There isn't just the well of support we've got that's rock solid. And by the way, when the pollsters ask, Conservative, Labour, Lib Dem voters, Reform voters to vote, we come way above the other parties. Those that have decided they're going to support us and be with us, they are 8 9s out of 10. Yeah, they're going to go on the 4th of July or use their postal vote or whatever it is. And that number is much lower than the other parties, which I think is really interesting. But I also sense, and I've seen this through knocking on doors, I've seen this through various extensive research in public houses all up and down, all over. Tough job being a party leader. But I just know we are the conversation.
Yeah.
We are the conversation. I popped into a pub in Hampshire yesterday. The friend of mine runs, unannounced, didn't know I was coming. I popped in. He said, "My God," he said, "you've certainly got all talking of an evening in here." There are many, many more millions than the millions who already say they're going to vote for us with a very high certainty to vote. There are many, many more millions thinking about it. Haven't yet made their mind up. Some who are still clinging on to the idea they might vote Conservative, and some who are saying we're going to vote Labour in disgust. We could do much, much better than we're doing right now. And one final thing which is interesting. So, for years and years, well, I started this 30 years ago. I was campaigning on the streets of Eastleigh in a by-election 30 years ago. I know, I'm really ancient. And through all those years, and all the ups and downs, and big disappointments, but huge successes, winning European elections in 2014 with UKIP, winning European elections with the Brexit Party in 2019, and through getting 4 million votes in a general election and one seat. I've seen all the ups and downs that life in politics can throw at you. But the one thing UKIP never succeeded in doing, and the one thing the Brexit Party never succeeded in doing, was reaching significant numbers of young people. And this is fascinating. We are not doing well with the millennials. The 25 to 35s, we're not doing well with. But Generation Z, Gen Z, the 15 to 25s, something remarkable is happening. And I mean truly remarkable is happening. And our support in that age bracket is rapidly, and I mean rapidly going up. The followings I've built up on TikTok, Instagram, those sort of accounts is amazing. And I was even, here we are, joking against myself. Story came out 2 days ago that I'd been voted, you don't ask me. I've been voted the sexiest party leader. This may have been to do with revealing my whole body to the world while I was surrounded. I don't know. I thought it might put people off. But, So I said to the press guys, "Who conducted the poll?" IllicitEncounters.com. So maybe I'm not quite as proud of it as I was when Yeah, and young support's coming for us, and football supporters. In Germany last week, the first England game, and the second England game today, and I've been sent these incredible pictures of young lads, English football supporters, wearing Farage masks. No, seriously. Sections of the crowd chanting my name. Something remarkable is happening out there. There's an awakening in a younger generation who've had enough of being dictated to, had enough of being lectured to, and they're seeing through the BS they're getting in schools and universities where they're not. Now, enough from me, I'm sure you're bored to death by now, but hopefully what I bring to this campaign and leadership of this, and it's a party, but it's a movement. We're a movement. The very passion that I see in you in this room, we're a movement. We're a movement for genuine change. We don't want elections in Britain to be just about a change of management, because that's all it is between these two guys. We want genuine change, reform at every level, because we recognise that we're in decline. We're in economic decline, we're in social decline, and even a form of moral decline in terms of an understanding of who we are, our past, and our hopes for the future. And perhaps we've even lost touch with the Judeo-Christian roots of everything that was built in this country. So We recognise that Britain is broken, and when the patient's ill, there's only one solution, it's radical surgery. And those radical ideas, when we campaign for them after this general election, when the Conservatives are tearing themselves, what's left of them, are tearing themselves to pieces, when Labour proved to be utterly incompetent and incapable of solving the very, very real problems that we face of a failing National Health Service, of a massive national debt, I think our ideas, our radical ideas for change, will become more and more and more popular. So I just take the view that the Conservatives deserve to lose the election, and Labour don't deserve to win. And that's our Do we have time for questions?
I would like a couple, that's fine.
Right, I'm happy to take some questions. Please, the gentleman there, just shout out loud, please.
I've spent 7 years recently working for CCHQ. I resigned recently to come and support you. Thank you for being the voice of the true Conservatives up and down the country. What would you say to the tens of thousands of Conservative Party members who look around and think, this party doesn't represent me, I want something different, and they see that there is an option here, but they haven't taken the plunge yet?
No, you're right. I did reference that. There are millions of people out there, not just Conservatives, but people leaning towards Labour as well. And don't forget, UKIP took more Labour votes in 2015 than it took Conservative votes. I would just say to these people who are wavering, who are still part of the Conservative Party, don't feel guilty for leaving them. They've left you. They've left you. 14 years of Conservative government. And, they may as well rename themselves the SDP, because they've become a high tax, low liberty, mass immigration party that listens to giant multinational businesses, have lost touch with the 5.5 million men and women out there that run their own businesses or act as sole traders. They've lost their soul. They've lost their soul. And I do think Cameron and Osborne have an awful lot to do with this. That was the direction they took the party in. So I would just say to these people, look, the fact that it's been there for 190 years, it is no longer fit for purpose. What do you believe in most? The party or the country? And that's the question they must ask themselves. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thomas Godfrey from the Sun newspaper. I just wanted to read something to you that your candidate, Surrey Heath, said.
Oh dear, we're going to be very bored here.
Election hustings. I will read it out verbatim. We've already been put, this is what Samantha Goggins said, we've already been put through the Afghan war by the Labour Party, the Falklands war by the Conservative Party, and we're possibly not too far away now for another war because obviously we are supporting Ukraine as well. I just wanted to ask, I'm sure you won't, do you agree with the suggestion it was Margaret Thatcher who instigated hostilities in the Falklands and that it was us and not Argentina or the British public were put through defence of British territory?
I didn't hear what instigate. Did she say instigate?
She didn't say instigate.
Did she say instigate?
She said the British public were put through the Falklands War by the
Ah,
government.
so she didn't say instigate.
Thank
you. I was confused for a moment there. Well, we could have surrendered to the Argentinians, of course. We could have just said you can have it. In fact, the spineless, gutless old Etonians who surrounded her on that day, on the 3rd of April 1982, wanted her to do exactly that. And I'm sure the current lot would be pretty much with the chinless wonders of just over 40 years ago. No, she made a decision and took us to war. So in terms of total accuracy, what has been said is right. The vast majority of the British population supported that decision then and support it now. A tiny minority took a very different view. But here's the thing. We've got candidates who have different opinions. We are not some sort of absolutist regime where unless you follow, the word of the dear leader, you'll somehow be, expunged or disappear as a human being. We let people have different opinions. We believe in free speech. We believe in democracy. And I'll tell you what, most of our candidates are a thoroughly decent bunch of blokes and women. We've got one or two that slipped through the net. We were let down badly. by a commercial company we sent a lot of money to, as you well know. So, you know, all parties have problems. To my knowledge, none of our candidates are involved in an illegal betting ring as we speak.
First of all, I want to thank you for what you've done, both for fighting for Brexit for 20 years, even when it was in the political backwards. I'm a member of the Gen community. I'm only 20 years old. All my family speak of a Britain that doesn't exist anymore, and it's been killed by mass immigration and Labour and Tory social decay. And I really think that you can bring it back, and I just want to ask, because of, you say there's a movement all over Europe, the PEN, the AFD in Germany, even Maloney in Italy. Do you think that good times are on the horizon?
Well, I think that changed political times are almost here, but that's as a result of bad times that have been created by failing governments. You know, so yes, there is absolutely a huge political sea change going on, and I think we'll see it through America later in the year as well. And yes, you're 20 and you're very typical of people I'm meeting. Just one correction. That evening, the 31st of January 2020, when we left the European Union, I hadn't been campaigning for 20 years for us to leave, it was actually 27. Well, we're done. I've got other things. I'm sorry. I've got other things to go and do. I'd love to come and say hello to all of you. I just haven't got time. It's nice to see some familiar faces from the past, lots of new ones as well. And thank you very much indeed for your support. And let's go out for these next 2 weeks and spread a message of optimism that we're going to do something remarkable. We're going to do something historic. We're going to do something that actually gives us genuine change. Thank you very, very much.
Hold on. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. If I could ask those people who are standing as candidates to come here, yeah, something like that. So thank you very much for coming along. Really appreciated it, and it's been a good start to the day. Thank you.
Yeah, no, Nigel will be having some shots taken on the clay shooting in about 10 minutes' time. If you can grab yourself some refreshments and then meet us all on the hard standing at the top of the hill here.
Ian! Tap in. Microphone. I think he's doing it, I think. No, You're getting pictures upstairs. John, I'm not doing it. Go again. Remind everyone, hard standing outside the building.
Yeah, everybody grab refreshments, and then the hard standing outside the building in about 7 minutes now. And you get an opportunity to get some pictures and things.